And hi, and we're back again with our tree recommendations. I hope you had a chance to look at the trees right outside your window. My first recommendation, the one that I had begun with, was this fantastic, number book, picture book, nursery rhyme, and actually a fable of living together called One, Two, Tree by Anushka Ravishankar, Sirish Rao, and the artist Durga Bai. What's lovely about it is that one dizzy ant. I mean, you can see in its basic sense, it's a counting book. One dizzy ant, and what does that one dizzy ant do? One dizzy ant totters up a tree. All right. Two dreamy lizards. What do the two dreamy lizards do? Two dreamy lizards follow lazily. So you can see that there's a sense of rhyme. You can see as you go past, we come to three Snoopy rats. Three Snoopy rats run up to take a peek. And that's about the peek that we're going to give you into this fantastic book, which is really illustrated in this glorious Pardhan Gond tradition. It's the Gond art of Durga Bai that really brings this book alive. And what happens with every passing number, the tree is ever expanding, ever giving, adding more and more and more people, more and more creatures up the tree. It is an improbable number of animals, obviously, as you go past to 8, 9, 10, but that's perhaps just the absolute delight that both a child reader and an adult reader is likely to derive from this wonderful book published by Tara called One, Two, Tree. Sumana Kundagrami, hello, waiting to get book recommendations for my 6-year-old daughter. She loves trees. How lovely. There are many, many tucked away in this bazaar. So this one, like I said, published by Tara, priced at 300 rupees. We would recommend it for the youngest, of readers. 2 plus, 3 plus, depending. And of course, the visuals are so striking, so you can well show them to even younger readers. So that is One, Two, Tree by Tara. The next book that we have is a lovely little one from Children's Book Trust. And I just love the title of this one that says, Have you ever thanked a tree? Really, have we ever stopped and paused to thank a tree? Well, Shamla Shanmugasundaram, a big supporter of Funky Rainbow, who's the author of this book and it's been illustrated by Ashish Bagchi, tell us in this lovely story why we should thank a tree. And you can see lovely illustrations giving you exactly why we owe a giant debt of gratitude to the trees surrounding us. And it's really nice, the random things that the author has picked. For instance, who gives you cotton which makes your pillow soft and fluffy? And then there's a little bit of a fact up there. Who gives you a cricket kit to play with your friends? Well, and so many little objects that we use in everyday life. In fact, the very books that we're holding, the paper for these books coming from trees. And I think it's only right that we devote a lot of this paper to books on trees themselves. We would recommend this certainly for 4+-year-olds, even 5+-year-olds, because there's lots of bits and bytes of information on different things that we get from trees. This one published by CBT and priced at 40 rupees. As always, all the books that we are recommending at the bazaar today up on our website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Please click on the tab that says bazaar, and there will be a drop down menu. One of the heads will be trees. You can click on it because always and every single time. Fortunately, we have more books than we can talk about. We pick a few to focus on and talk about, but there are several others, and there's this delightful, lovely collection of books on trees when you click on that tab that says trees. My third book, that I want to recommend, a lovely gem of a book from Jyotsna Prakashan called Nona and the Apple Tree, written by Kanchan Shine and illustrated by Radhika Tipnis. What is this a story about? It's a classic story, and I'm sure many of us have read, simple ones like this from Western literature growing up. Well, it's about a little girl called Nona. I just love the way Nona looks. She's got a cool attitude, really, from the way she's been illustrated. Well, she eats an apple and spat out the seed. It flew out of the window and fell on the street. A dog came by and stepped on it. The seed stuck to its paw, so now let's follow it. What happens to that seed, and you know what? You have to absolutely watch out for the marvelous surprise ending, or should I say surprise beginning, perhaps, really, because often the ending is the beginning, is the ending is the beginning. So this one, a delightful little story for the youngest of readers. You can see very little text on the pages, so we would recommend it for readers 3 plus. This one published by Jyotsna Prakashan, priced at 75 rupees. Matthew Jacob saying, hello, folks at the traveling bookshop. Hello, Matthew Jacob. What a pleasure to have you here this morning, all the way from Dubai. I hope you're sitting under a tree and listening to the bazaar. I'm not sure. Muttama is already telling me, I'm not sure there are that many trees up there, real trees in Dubai, which means, that's an open invitation to be here at Funky Rainbow whenever you'd like to. We promise you many trees and trees company for sure. My next book is a charming book of fiction called The Tree Boy, written by Srividya Venkat and illustrated by Nayantara Surendranath. This one, published by Pickle Yolk Books, is quirky as ever, really. Well, it's about a boy called Sid who was not always a tree. When did he become a tree? Well, he became a tree the day he missed hitting a goal while playing a game of football. And what happens when he misses that goal? I mean, Pickle Yolk really has the ability to do these charming, unusual, quirky books that are so much more than just the story that you're reading. So here's Sid, and he's playing football and he misses a goal, and his captain in the team says, in fact, it begins like that. It says, Sid was not always a tree. Well, not until the day he missed saving a goal. Don't just stand there like a brainless tree, shouted the team captain. Sid stared at the only tree in front of him. Well, it did look brainless, standing there doing nothing. Sid felt lonely. Anyway, that night he sat down and with his only friend, that's his diary, and wrote on it saying, "Silly tree, I don't ever want to be you." And he looked at a plant that was there in his room and he just pushes it away. What happens? Sometimes the most amazing things happen, or the most unexpected things happen. Well, that night, and you can see these glorious illustrations that accompany the book, that night, Sid turns into a tree. What happens? How does the story how does the story evolve, really? I can see Malika Ravi Kumar saying, this looks lovely. I would like to check this out. My kids love football. Indeed, I was absolutely thinking of you, Malika, because it does begin with shooting a goal. The thing is, as in most Pickle Yolk books, it's a multi-layered story. It's a story about loneliness. It's the story of putting yourself in somebody's shoes to understand what their lives are really like. And it's a lovely tale of acceptance, perhaps in some ways. To each story, I mean, to each book, a reader, each reader taking away some wonderful story from the book. So The Tree Boy, written by Srividya Venkat and Nayantara Surendranath, we would recommend this for 5+ year olds, 6+ year olds perhaps too. Sunila Kulkarni Gupte, hello team Funky Rainbow, so thrilled to be here, for this trees session. Absolutely, Sunila, we know you have green fingers anyway. We've seen beautiful photographs of all the plants, all the flowers, all the trees that you tend to, and we're delighted that we've got a green fingers expert with us here today at the bazaar. Like I said, The Tree Boy by Srividya Venkat and Nayantara Surendranath, a charming must-read book for all, children above the age of 5. This one is priced at 350 rupees. Like I said, all these books that we're recommending up, on our website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Click on the tab that says Bazaar, and there'll be a drop-down menu that features books on trees. We do have a discount coupon put up right on top of our site. So when you're checking out, please do use the discount coupon to get a good discount and buy more books. Our next recommendation this morning is again, and I believe this is probably a book that not too many of you may be familiar with. I could be wrong, but it's really one that has been in our collection for a while, but never really got our attention till we decided to focus and do books on trees. So, like I said, this whole exercise of a bazaar every Saturday is such a learning for us as well. I mean, we're discovering things in and around our own office. Sunila saying, oh my God, no expert Vidya. I only love green and only my balconies, but they're so beautiful for sure, Sunila. Like I said, we stumble upon gems tucked away at every nook and corner of our office. So as much as you all come back and tell us that you're enjoying the recommendations and you're so glad that we're recommending books on particular themes, we are so glad that we're doing this as well. And that little gem of a book that sort of revealed itself from our shelves is called The Heart of the Tree. It's an African folktale retold. The text is by Anand Chabukswar and it's illustrated by Makarand Dambhare. What is this African story about? And really, sometimes stories about trees, so fulfilling, so meaningful, or in so many different ways. Well, this is the story of, and you can see lovely pastel shade illustrations, on the pages of this beautiful book. Well, it's the story of a hare who, is walking through, on a hot summer day, the peak of summer, foraging around for food in a scrubland. And when the heat is so intense, I mean, even his hunger really dries up. He actually just wants the respite of some shade. Happily for him, little, somewhat far away, he spots a tree, a giant, big. I mean, when you see this picture, it's a giant, big, giving tree for sure, really, right? And what does he do? He runs up to the tree and he says, would you mind if I rested in your shade for a while? And the tree, with its gentle rustle, it's an old tree with a gentle rustle of leaves, says, yes, definitely, yes. The hare puffs and pants and with relief sort of, enjoys the cool shade of the tree. Of course, the leaves, then there's a small breeze and the leaves start fluttering in the wind. And when the leaves flutter, thump, there is a ripe, big fruit that falls down from the branches of the tree. And yes, the hare happily, of course, the tree generously tells the hare, you can have that fruit as well. And in that manner, the tree keeps, giving so many treats to the hare, and the hare graciously accepts every single tree very kindly, very politely, and very, very nicely. what happens then is that the tree is so happy at how polite and how lovely, the hair is. And he says, I'm going to reveal to you the heart, my heart. And opens up his branches to reveal the heart of the tree. It's a sight that leaves the hare absolutely awestruck. He's so happy, he's so glad. And I'm not going to show you those pictures where the heart of the tree is revealed, because they're really wonderful illustrations, and literally the heart of the tree opens up like a door. So the hare is really happy, refreshed, has eaten enough, and then trots off, says thank you to the tree, seen the sight, magnificent sight, just trots off. And I'm afraid suddenly comes upon a quite a wicked hyena. What happens next? Well, we're not going to give that away to you. This wonderful book on the heart of a tree, part fantasy. I mean, a lot of fantasy, but I think a lot of life lessons tucked away inside the pages of this book, The Heart of the Tree. This one published by Jyotsna Prakashan, priced at 100 rupees. Of course, we have another lovely little one. And of course, The Heart of the Tree, we would recommend, I think, for 6 plus year olds. The children that you're reading to, or who are reading better than we do. So, based on their comprehension levels and reading levels, it's a story that you can use with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. In fact, I also believe that these age groups are rather limiting. If you, as an adult, decided to read this book even to a younger child, I'm sure, she would enjoy it considerably. So again, a lovely recommendation, a slim little book from CBT again, called The Walking Tree, written by that wonderful writer for children, Deepa Agarwal, who has many books to her name. This one written by Deepa Agarwal and illustrated by Ajanta Guha Thakurta is a really sweet story. It's all about the fact that there's this giant tree in the midst of a dense forest, and the birds come and sit on its branches, the monkeys swing on its branches with their tails, and when each creature comes to the tree, they're always telling the tree all kinds of stories. Well, there's the breeze that makes its leaves rustle, and when the tree asks the breeze, where do you come from? Well, the breeze says, I've come all the way from the top of the mountain. And the tree, each time the tree listens to where the monkeys have come from or where the birds have come from, the tree doesn't want to be in one place. The tree wants to go there too. The tree is listening to all these magnificent stories, and the tree says, oh my God, you know what? I never go anywhere. And I know I need to be here because so many birds, so many insects, so many animals, so many people, they rest in my shade, they sit on my branches, and I need to be here. But oh, I'd really love to go here, there, everywhere. The thing is, and of course, when the minute the tree utters those words, what the tree's wish comes true. The tree can now start walking, and it starts off by walking down the road that leads out of the forest. What happens? A hilarious adventure that follows, with to see a tree walking here, there, everywhere. You've got to pick up this charming book to find out what happens as part of the tree's adventures. This one, like I said, published by CBT and priced at 40 rupees. My next set of recommendations are two wonderful books from Pratham. We have spoken about these books earlier, but they're so relevant and so meaningful to the theme of this bazaar. And this book, which I personally love and is one of my absolute favorites, is Jadav and the Tree Place, written and illustrated by that wonderful writer-illustrator, Vinayak Varma. What is Jadav and the Tree Place all about? Well, Jadav has the best job in the world. We would switch places with Jadav any day. What is his job? His job is to make forests. It is actually based on the life of a real person, Jadav Mullai Payang, who is a conservationist, a recipient of the Padma Shri, and who lives in Majoli, Assam. What is the story all about? Well, Jadav is a tree planter, and what does he like most of all? He loves tree places because they are just full of life. No tree places make Jadav terribly sad. So years ago, and then that's where the story begins, when he's walking by the Brahmaputra, in Assam, he comes to a barren patch of land which is dry, hot. The sand was powdery and striped. And he says, "My God, how can sand really be striped? Let me go closer and take a look." And what does he see? It's not really, striped. They are snakes slithering here, there, everywhere. And Jadav feels so sad to see the snakes, slithering around and not having, not being able to slide near trees, no shade, virtually dying because of the heat of that dry place. So what does Jadav decide to do? Well, he decides to start off planting trees in the place, and come what may, come what, no matter what anybody says, he keeps planting more and more trees. And what happens? I mean, and it's hard work, it's not easy. He's doing this all single handedly. The rains come, and in a while, there's a giant bamboo grove in that place. You can see beautiful pictures of that bamboo grove, like I said, written and illustrated by Vinayak Varma. What happens? Does Jadav stop with that one place in Assam? It's such an inspiring story. We really need to tell our young people that there are people all around us who do so many things selflessly just to make the world a much better place. Again, a story, a multi-layered story, a lot of life lessons tucked away in its pages, but most of all about the fact that trees, give us life. And plant a tree whenever, wherever, and however you can. This one published by Pratham, priced at 55 rupees. And close on the heels of that book is this. Mutama says, "A huge shout out to you, my friend Joseph Rexon, who has planted over a lakh of trees across South India. Kudos to you. Really wonderful work. The kind of work that takes root and bears fruit forever and ever. Really a big shout out to you, Joseph Rexon, if you are watching." This one, complementing Jadav and the tree place, is this excellent book called Chipko Takes Root. Again, written and illustrated by Jayanti Manokaran, a huge supporter of Funky Rainbow and everything we do. What we particularly love about Jayanti is every time she picks up books for herself to read, she'll always write into us and say, "I'm giving you a little bit money to buy books for any community library that you would like to send your books to." Look at that lovely gesture, and we really thank her for, and those books, they have really found their way into different, NGOs and, government school organizations, and just into the hands of children who are perhaps not able to afford buying these books. So yes, a big shout out goes to our dear friend Jayanti Manokaran, whose book Chipko Takes Root is all about the wonderful Chipko movement that took place in India several decades ago in the 70s and the 80s. What does Chipko mean? Chipko in Hindi means to get stuck. And what did the people in this place, the people who started off the Chipko movement, do? Well, they clung on to their trees. They hugged their trees, saying, "We're not going to let you cut them down. We're not going to let you mow them down. And in this book, which is set in the hills, in Uttarakhand, Jayanti tells the story through the eyes of a young girl called Dichi, who's a brave Bhotia girl of the Bhotia tribes who live there, in Uttarakhand, and who takes part in the Chipko movement to save her beloved trees. I mean, everybody in the village, oh, Jayanti Manokaran saying, many thanks for including Chipko, many thanks for watching us. It would be an incomplete bazaar if we didn't include the Chipko book, because it's a unique representation of the way India's people love their trees. I mean, what a novel manner of protesting, to hug your trees and not let them go. It's a heartwarming story of the power of collective action, and it's something that we have all read of growing up, right? The Chipko movement is right there in the textbooks of so many children who go, who are in grades 4 and 5 and 6. I would say, please read the story, add it into that collection, because the Chipko movement is really brought alive so marvelously by Jayanti Manokaran in her book Chipko Takes Root, and written and illustrated by her. So that's just absolutely wonderful. I can show you some pictures. We would recommend this for 6+ year olds at Funky Rainbow, perhaps even 7+ year olds, adults of all ages, of course. This one published by Pratham, priced at 65 rupees. Before I get on to my next clutch of recommendations, I'd like to say a bunch of hi, hellos to so many friends who've joined us here this morning. Simrita Kaur, how lovely to see you here. Aarti Mamta, we have got to do something at one of our bazaar, and we will hatch some plans sitting under one of the trees in our office and be in touch with you. Manshwi, Lakshmi S, Sumi Anup, thank you so much for sharing our posts every week. We're really delighted that you're here. Sinfu Bala, Cavity, Mommy of Missy, Anjay Rajagopal. Is it Anjay Rajagopal? Anjay Rajagopal, Matthew Jacob, Sunila Kulkarni, Shruti Sri Raghunath, how lovely to see you here this morning. Of course, our guest for the day, who's already watching us, Malika Ravi Kumar. We'll introduce you in a bit. Vijay Lakshmi, Ashok Kumar, David Williams, all the way from Australia. Sheena John, how lovely to see you here. We know we love your tree-filled school compound as well, and really miss being there to do all our pop-ups. Seema Karant, what a pleasure. Sumana Kundagrami, lovely to have you here this morning. Rupa Baliga, such a pleasure. I can already see you writing reviews for so many books. We are so thankful that you put out those reviews and you tag Funky Rainbow in on those posts. We're glad these books are going here, there, everywhere from our bookshelves. Thank you, Rupa Baliga, for really championing these books all over again. Geeta Mani, Mom, thank you so much for being here this morning. And I hope you're watching this from our garden. I'm not sure you're doing that really. And Jayanti Manokaran, such a pleasure. Quirky Girl, Finding Enchantment, how lovely to see you here this morning, Samina. We are delighted to have you here, and we probably will be seeing you soon at one of our bazaars. Padma Baliga, how I'm so delighted that you've joined us this morning. We know, I mean, even if we've never really spent time sitting under a tree, I know somehow wondering if there's a are we back? Okay, some little glitch. Before we introduce our guest for the day, maybe I will just quickly let me check. Yes, I will quickly run through one clutch of books that excuse me, it says oops. And we're back. And I really, we are back. Sorry for all these glitches. Really, I, wish to sit under a tree and do a bazaar with all of you live one day. We just hope, keeping fingers crossed and hoping that it's going to happen very, very soon. Just quickly before we bring in our guest for the day, a wonderful clutch of books on seeds from where all these trees sprout. I mean, in fact, there's that lovely quote that says a forest of oak trees contained in a single acorn. So we've got this lovely clutch of books on seeds, and I'm going to quickly run you through a couple of them, starting with what is one of my favorite ones called The Seed. It's a bilingual book by that wonderful author illustrator Deepa Balsavar, whose many books have entertained us and engaged us so gloriously. This is such a simple book. I mean, meant for the youngest of readers. Filled with Deepa's charming illustrations about a little girl who finds a seed and puts it into a pot and waits. Well, what a pleasure that really is, right? I mean, when you're running around in the hurly burly of life and, all kinds of bips and bleeps on your phone, just imagine planting something in a pot and waiting for it to grow to see what comes out. Every time we used to go to schools, a lot of schools would give us like little potted plants. We wouldn't know what those plants are, but you put it out on our balcony and wait. And then it's lovely to see everybody in the office saying, I wonder what kind of plant is going to emerge from there, really. And this one about a girl who puts a little seed into a pot and, gives it water, gives it sunshine, and what happens after that. It's a charming bilingual book meant for readers 2+. Another little lovely book of children and a little seed that becomes a big something that the cover absolutely gives away to you. This one is called Sowing a Seed, and it's a story illustrated by Shraddha Kirkire, which is about two children again who plant a seed. And lo and behold, again a bilingual book. So this one in English and Hindi. What happens? They water it and it sprouts. Of course, like I said, the cover tells you what that little seed eventually becomes. But it's so lovely to have the youngest of readers look at it and jump up in joy to know what that seed has finally become. There is another one called BG Story, which is part of the first look at science series. The two earlier ones that we recommended on seeds, absolutely for the youngest readers, meant for kids 2+. This one, the BG Story one, is meant for 6+ year olds. I think Sumana said, what books would be suitable. This one would certainly be suitable. This one is about BG, the super seed, who's off on a super ride, and she decides to glide over icy lands, hot deserts, swooshes down a river, and she's a tough little seed who loves adventure, but eventually happy to come back to her own soft soil home. Now, what is this? It gives you a seed's eye view of the different landforms. It gives you, there's so much, so many facts tucked away in its pages, and you can see it's BG, zooming over different kinds of landscapes, unraveling different mysteries of nature for the youngest readers. This one, like I said, meant for 6+ year olds, priced at 135 rupees. Some of these books we just have very few copies of. I'm afraid some of them are in print, some of them are not in print. So the ones that exist in print, we have more copies of, but some of those that are not, possibly just a single copy or two in our collection. This one, a lovely book again from Pratham called Let's Go Seed Collecting. It's about, two friends, Tuka, Poi, and their best friend, Inji, the dog. They go around collecting seeds. We would recommend this one certainly for 6+ year olds. You can see a lot of text, written by Neha Sumitran and illustrated by Archana Srinivasan. So illustrations literally leaping off the pages of the book. Now, what happens? The adventure begins when the three friends meet Pacha, the tamarind tree. What kind of adventure do they go on while they are collecting seeds? And you can really see, the laughing kids and the seeds, and even in the cover, little bits and bites of things put all over the place, just bringing alive the beauty of seed collecting and what children eventually do with these things that they have collected. We've put saving the seed savers as well, isn't it? I think, Sham, the next book is the seed savers, perhaps. I don't have a copy to show it up. Oh, okay, it's not. It's Traveling Seeds, which is this lovely, lovely book from Kalpavriksh, written by sorry, yeah, after this we can show it after this, written by Lavanya Karthik, which tells you about amazing seeds that we have in our midst. And what I love so much about the book is the fact that she has classified or categorized the seeds in such marvelous ways, giving them such charming names. Flyer, she calls someone; floater, she calls someone else; trickster is the third seed; and hitchhiker too. My, sounds so much like us human beings. And Lavanya, accompanied by wonderful illustrations, really pages that are packed with pictures, all about what seeds do, to keep different species alive, how seeds travel, the animals that they meet on these journeys, how these animals help them travel. This lush green book, about traveling seeds, such a delight to hold in your hands and read, really. And, injected with a lovely dose of humor by Lavanya Karthik. This one published by Kalpavriksh, priced at 100 rupees. The Pratham book that I wanted to talk about, and that I don't have a physical copy of it in my hand, but I know that it's going to be with us later in the day today, or possibly on Monday. This excellent book by Bijal Vachrajani called The Seed Savers, which is, again, the power of collective action really stuns us every single time. This is about a community of farmers who always running out of money to get seeds to plant during the harvest season. So what do they do? And also, so nice to see so many women's hands up there, which means many of those farmers, they're women. The book illustrated by Jayesh Sivan, of course. What did they do? They decide to set up a seed bank. And really, what a wonderful idea. Because once you put things into the bank, it slowly and steadily grows, much like you do in a regular bank. And what happens to this community of farmers? How does that bank help them? Do they ever struggle for seeds ever again? And is this model, only valid in one place, or are there seed banks that exist all over the country? It's a fantastic book on seeds, by Bijal Vachrajani, and I think it gives young readers, again 6+, the absolute thrill of working together as a community to take yourself out of a difficult situation. I'm so glad she wrote this book. The final one on seeds is again by a favorite writer of ours called Sandhya Rao, written many, many books of fiction, but she has these two wonderful ones by Terry called Seed, Soil, and Sun. Now, this one all about seeds, exploring where our food comes from, how do plants make our food, a little bit about photosynthesis, but written in Sandhya's lovely, chatty style, telling you. And I know that this is again something, a natural phenomenon that kids have to study all through school, whether, right from the fact that when you're in second grade, going all the way up to 10th or 12th grade, in different levels of complexity about how seeds germinate to become plants and trees, the process of photosynthesis. And, the book has a lot of little bits and bytes of information about different kinds of trees, about the soil, about stems, and about how different ways, how nature combines in different ways, or like how different aspects of nature come together to give us the food that we eat. So this one, a wonderful recommendation for people who are interested in seeds and natural phenomena. This one published on recycled paper as Terry, which is an organization that works in environmental information and environmental dissemination. This one published by Terry, priced at 185 rupees. It also has a lovely game that you can play. My God, the things that we put into our books for children, really, right? I mean, it's enough to keep you engrossed for many hours, many days, and many years. So this one by Terry, priced at 185 rupees. And with that, I think we should say hello to our guest of the day. Shams, is Malika here? Yes, we are so glad to introduce you, if I may say this, to the latest tree on the block. If I may say that, well, we're not going to be interviewing a tree, but Malika Ravi Kumar has this excellent new book for children called Tracing Roots, Stories About Trees. Good morning, Malika, or rather, good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you so much, Vidya, and good afternoon to all your viewers as well. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We can hear you absolutely clearly, and I almost introduced you as the latest tree on the block, the latest tree book on the block, literally. And what a lovely one it is. So, Malika Ravi Kumar, I mean, there are several things that we do know about her. For instance, we know that she used to be a lawyer, which means she's probably like a great arguer. And should anyone decide to cross words with her at the moment, a human rights lawyer, Muttama clarifies, you're free to get into this battle of words with Malika, but we'd say do that under a tree. But what is really fascinating in everything that Malika shared about is her interest in so many diverse topics and how she brings them all together into her books. She loves history, she loves culture, she loves nature, and she basically wants to bring alive everything that is so fuddy-duddy and boring in our school books, or the way you kind of talk to a child and say, well, photosynthesis is the process of blah 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 blah, and you're like, you've lost the child already. Malika brings alive all this information, and puts them into her books, one of which we're focusing on today. Sunila Kulkarni saying it's a beautiful, fantastic book to be kept and circulated. She just loved it. And I'm going to add a line there, to be read sitting under a tree for sure, really, right?
Yes. Thank you, Sunila. Very nice to hear that. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. This has to be outdoors. It's an outdoor book. Hopefully, we'll all be outdoors soon.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we just thought, we'd chat with you, Malika. There are tree books and tree books, right? And I'm so glad that we do, given that many books, books are largely made out of paper that comes from trees. I'm glad that we do devote reams and reams of paper to writing about trees as well. And yours is such a fantastic addition to that collection. But what I wanted to ask you, Malika, was that stories really just seem to sprout unstoppably from trees. I mean, I began my session recalling so many trees from our childhood stories, basically. So why did you choose to write a book of stories about trees?
Okay, so children are often told a lot of stories about animals. So you have the Panchatantra, you have the Jataka tales, you have generally Aesop's fables, whether in India or outside. Animals, of course, are found in many children's stories. Of course, human beings are found in all children's stories, stories of kings and queens and emperors and so on. But I found it strange that there were very few books that are telling stories about trees, which give us so much more than humans and animals do. We can live without many of the other creatures, but without trees, I think survival would be a challenge. So about these creatures, and when Indian mythology, Indian history, our epics, our folklore are replete with stories about trees, because trees were such an important part of our daily routine and living. But they were all there in our in the sources. But for children, distilling them for children, there were very few books or stories that I found narrated in a manner that children can appreciate these stories. So I found that as sort of a gap, that all these myths and epics are narrating such wonderful stories, but the children are being told only the human story. So Ramayana, for example, has several tree stories, or the Mahabharata has, but we know the stories of the human beings, or sometimes even the animals there, like the deer and the the vulture, etc., in the Ramayana, but we don't know the stories about the trees.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a gap which needed to be filled.
That is such a lovely reason to write this fantastic book, which is, of course, like you rightly said, Vijay Lakshmi Nagaraj saying, "Hi, team FR. I'm here for this lovely session. Just made it in time, Vijay Lakshmi." We're talking to our guest, Malika Ravikumar, and we do know that you are a green fingers person yourself. So you're going to enjoy this session. Like I was watching another interview that you'd done, and you said, Swati Karbanda's illustrations really bringing alive the stories in your book,
Absolutely.
for of stories of trees, from myths, from legends about trees themselves. I just wanted to quickly show our viewers some lovely pictures. I know you have a couple lined up in the course of the session as well, but it's
Yes.
really a book, like Sunila said, that should be dipped into again and again and again. Of course, when you were writing this book, Malika, you may have discovered like one or two really exciting things about trees, right? I mean, why don't you share like one, oh my God, I never knew that fact, or maybe like some aha story, really, I didn't even know that such a story existed. Why don't you just
Right.
share one or two of the discoveries that you made when you were writing this book?
Sure. So one of the I have a bunch of images here also. One of the wonderful books which I'll share later that I read about trees is called A Hidden Life of Trees,
Yes.
and it's a beautiful book. It's not for children, but we can read it and tell children this. And the author there has revealed some fascinating secrets about how trees interact with each other under the ground, how the canopy interacts with each other, which I didn't know about, and that sort of completely drew me into this world of trees. And so, for example, here there is a picture. If you're walking down the street, just look up. You tend to usually look down or look ahead, but look up. I love to look up at tree canopies. And here you see there are 3 or 4 different trees, but none of them are overstepping their sort of territory,
Right.
because they all want to make the most of the sunlight. And I found this so beautiful, and you find this everywhere. I've noticed, when you step out, you can just look up and see that trees do this, and it's a wonderful thing of each of them saying, I want my sunlight, but I'll let you have yours too, without overstepping. So this was like a wow discovery that I made. And then I read more about it in The Hidden Life of Trees, and I learned that this is sort of not deliberate, because we don't credit trees with brains and nervous systems, but it is something that they have sort of evolved, to do so that they can each coexist and survive. So that was an absolute, a magnet that drew me into this world of trees. And the wow discovery also was when I was reading about mangoes. I was doing some research about mangoes for something else, and I learned that India had 1,500 varieties of mangoes. I
Wow.
couldn't believe it. I checked again and then again, and I checked various sources because I was sure there's a mistake. And I looked up this mango horticulture society. I think it is based in Trichy, or somewhere in the south, or in Kerala, and they have it on their website. So I don't think it's a mistake, but it still blows my mind. 1,500 varieties, because I would have guessed maybe 100, 200, and we all of us eat mangoes, but about 10 varieties, and then 1,500. It's just mind boggling.
Wow.
So, and I wanted to find out more about trees and their varieties and how humans have interacted with trees. And there is another picture here I have about a story which I will narrate later, where we've all heard the story about the elephant and the 5 blind men, a very popular story we narrate to children about how you can get different perspectives of the truth,
Right.
but the truth has many dimensions, sort of thing. And then I read a Jataka tale story, which is the Palash and the 4 princes, which was an Indian version of this story, but I had never heard of it in my
Oh.
childhood. And that's what I'm going to narrate at the end. But when I heard this story, it was something that it troubled me, that I knew these world legends and stories, but similar legends in my own culture, I hadn't been told. So it again was another magnet that, instantly drew me into this world of trees.
Wow, wow. That just so many amazing facts, like Sunila just said, and Vijay Lakshmi saying, I'm definitely going to add this into my collection for kids. And 1,500 species of mangoes. My God. I mean, I'm going to say like
Varieties of
varieties
mango.
of mangoes, really. My God. So, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep, and so many mangoes to eat before you.
And honestly, I'm still a little skeptical if I got it right, because I find it amazing to believe that there could be so many varieties. But if it's
Wow,
up on their
really? My God,
site,
so many
yes,
mangoes to eat, really, right? So
yeah.
tell us, did this love for trees and nature, was it a childhood that you really spent in the midst of trees and nature? How did your special connection with trees happen?
No, strangely, it was not a part of my childhood because I grew up in Mumbai, in a city. My street had only a couple of trees. It was densely, a lot of buildings and concretized jungle sort of area. So I didn't have much exposure to trees. It was only after I got married into a family of people who were environmentalists and active environmental activists, and they worked in reforestation and other such were involved in other such activities, that I sort of started connecting, and I realized there was this whole world that I knew nothing about. And I started going on tree walks with the Bombay Natural History Society and with other organizations, and started learning about it. So it's all part of my adult life and not from my childhood. And I think that is what actually prompted me to write, because I had missed out so much in my childhood, and I wanted to share that with my children and their friends. And of course, the larger, I started with my children and then went on to write for larger groups, and of course publishing a book now, which is whole world out there reading. But yeah, I wanted to share that with children.
That's in fact, that was one of the questions that I absolutely wanted to ask you, and you said it, like a lot of children growing up in concrete jungles these days, really, right? And so what can we do as adults, to spark that connection with nature in kids? And why do you think it's important? Because while you were talking, you said you felt that you kind of lost out on something, growing up as a child, not being that connected to trees. So really, what can parents, and many people watching, the parents, grandparents, teachers, librarians, so give us, tell us what we can do.
Yeah, so I totally understand. In urban today, I live in an IIT campus, which is very green. It's a
Ah,
typical government campus, so it's very green. We have a lot of trees, but not everybody has the luxury of this green surrounding. But the anything can trigger the curiosity of a child. So even if you get a creeper and plant it in your balcony or in your home, if you don't have a lot of space, and you ask the child to observe that creeper and how it is going, and the creeper sort of has tendrils which it creeps around any support that it gets and climbs every day. Maybe now everybody has phones, so you can click pictures every day and see how the creeper is growing, and that sort of begins this curiosity in a child to know how it happened, how did it grow, because we think plants don't move. So how is it judging where the sunlight is? Then turn the creeper around maybe, and the plant is now facing you, but the next day it's back facing the sun. So these sort of things can trigger interest in children about trees, even if you don't have a lot of trees around you. And if you have even a few trees, or every city has a park where there are trees, take them there often, and not just to play, but also observe things around. In different seasons, how a tree looks different. Maybe the child can be asked to draw how the tree is changing over seasons. This, for example, is one of my favorite trees. It's the laburnum tree, and it's also part of many rituals. If in Malayalam, in Kerala, you have, it's called the Kanni Konna, and it is used, in Vishu. So you can look up, the rituals that you're doing at home. You're putting a toran with mango leaves outside your door.
right.
So those can be trigger points to begin conversations, even if you're not living in a very green place. There are several interactions in our festivals, in our culture, in our sort of even city life that we can have with trees, that can be starting points to begin conversation, and then go further. And then of course during holidays, take your children out to green spaces where they can discover more.
Absolutely. So nicely said. Actually, the significance of trees. I mean, often at home, even growing up, so many leaves would make their way into, your house. Sunila saying, grow at home. Absolutely true. I have done the same with the kids. It works. They love watching anything grow. Absolutely. And, little trees that would, you would make torans, or, there'll be like a banana leaf to eat on at some point, or like, different leaves that making their way into some ritual. rituals and customs. Such a nice way to start conversations with kids about where those leaves came from, what are the stories that are associated with those leaves, really. But
Right.
of course, I mean, we are books people, and what so like the obvious question that we wanted to ask you, so why do tree books such a play such a big part in shaping our love for the natural world? Do you have any favorite tree books? One, there's a young child watching Avyuk Nair, and he says trees are the homes of a lot of cute animals and birds and insects, really.
Yes.
And that's absolutely right, Avyuk. Good afternoon to you. That's exactly what Malika was saying, that get children to observe different things on trees around. Shruti Sri Nagunath saying just some great ideas here that could be used with kids. But to ask you, why do tree books play such a big part in shaping our love for the natural world? And do you have any favorite tree books?
Right. So, traditionally, one would have heard these stories from grandmothers or older people in the house, or heard it during rituals. But today, unfortunately, we lose out on a lot of that. So, books are a way to sort of capture those stories which we are not hearing orally, or which one would have done maybe 2-3 generations ago. So, books, therefore, I think are a good way to capture that part of our culture and pass it on to the next generation. And you can read it at leisure. You can read it with someone, read it alone, take it out for a walk, like you said, sit under a tree and read. So it also gets you outdoors instead of just sitting in the house and reading something, because you see something in a tree book and you really want to see it in the world outside. So it's an outdoorsy sort of book. So it's not the typical bookworm sitting in a couch and reading sort of book. So it's a mix of reading and outdoors. So that's one reason I would suggest. And my favorite books, in fact, you mentioned a lot of children's books, and I forgot to send you a picture of this yesterday. But this book by Ranjit
Oh,
Lal,
yes, we do
which
have
is
it up.
trees of Medley Garden. Okay. Yes, it's
But
one of
go
my
right ahead.
favorite.
Yes.
Yes, because my children are slightly older. This one is something that's suitable for them. It's a lovely book about trees, where there are trees talking to each other, and there are secrets, and you discover many characteristics of trees like the banyan and so on through these stories here. But one of the books I would recommend, since you also mentioned how parents can start, taking children out and making them learn about trees, is this wonderful book. It's a tree guide. I think you have a picture from what I sent. This is
Look
a
at the
book
chat.
called The Trees of Delhi by Pradeep Kishan.
Ah.
Yeah. Sorry, not that's a picture from my book.
Oh, picture from her own. Do we have a picture of
Yeah.
the cover? I think. Okay. Well, while it comes up, you can
No, no,
continue.
no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, so this is the one, Trees of Delhi by Pradeep Kishan,
Right.
and this book is a field guide, and it says Delhi, but that sort of don't get misguided by the name. I've used it in Chennai, in Bombay, in Bangalore, in various places, and of course Delhi too, and it's wonderful. So he has a sort of key in the side, where he has different leaf shapes. So you can see the shape of the leaf, and then go to that particular color if you think the leaf is broad in the center or broad in the top,
Oh,
or it is
wow.
multi leaflets, which is a compound leaf. And you go to that particular leaf type, and then it gives you information on that. You of course have to sift through a bunch of trees with those leaves, but it gives you a lot of information from mythology and history, and how the tree flowers and how the tree sprouts and the seasons and so on. So it's a wonderful book to get drawn into the world of trees. It's not for children, but you can, for adults to go out on tree walks with children. This is a great book I would recommend for a start. Uh,
Lovely. Hmm.
and I also mentioned this Hidden Life of Trees, again, not a
Yes.
book for children, but something to understand this fascinating world. We think trees can't move and trees can't communicate, but this completely challenges and shatters all those perceptions one has about trees. So this is a wonderful book that I like about trees. But again, it's for adults to read and then tell children about it, because it's a sort of little complicated for children. So you have to distill it and narrate it to children. But
Yeah.
these are the two books.
This
Yeah.
one absolutely topped the bestseller chart. charts, because it's all
Yes.
about communicating. How do trees communicate with each other, really? And
Correct.
I'm so delighted that a book on trees, just zoomed to the top of the bestseller charts, actually.
Yes.
But the
It's
Pradeep Kashyap
beautifully
book is
written. Yeah.
really fascinating, and I'm so glad you recommended, post our session with you, we have a couple of books for older kids to recommend, but I'm really glad that you picked The Trees of Medley Garden by Ranjit Lal, an avid nature lover and
Yes.
a walker himself, really. Oh,
Yes.
that was just so, so many wonderful facts. And I can see so many people putting up things like, talking about the tree of life, then, saying about how trees were worshipped in the northeast, are still worshipped in the northeast. And I know that we preserved a lot of trees by way of sacred groves, putting up
Yes.
sacred groves, planting trees around religious places and calling them sacred groves, so we could preserve different species of trees.
Right.
There is one question for you before we get on to your story. There is Avyuk saying, Auntie, I have a question. Which are the rare trees in India which we don't know about commonly, but are perhaps some of the oldest ones?
Okay, so that's a very good question, Avyukt. A lot of common trees that you see in cities today, like the rain tree or the gulmohar, beautiful trees, but they're not native trees, and they grow very fast, and so they're planted by the planning authorities, but they're not native trees. But the native trees are like the banyan and the peepal and the neem. There are plenty of them, but rare trees. These again are common trees. There's one tree that immediately comes to mind is the tree of the rudraksh, which you
Ah.
find in a lot of Indian customs, and we Rudraksh mala is made out of it, and it is found in the Himalayan region. You have very few species planted deliberately in some cities. I think I've seen one of them in Mumbai somewhere. So Rudraksh is a very interesting ancient tree, which is also very rare. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh my gosh. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Muttama reminding me of, an old book that we had sort of put together, which Sham had, illustrated and written by Veena Seshadri. Greystroke had illustrated and written by Veena Seshadri, called The Woodcutter of Gura, published by
Okay.
Pratham. And, not up in available as a printed book, but available on the Storyweaver site, called The Woodcutter of Gura. It's really funny story. It's almost like Kalidasa sitting on the branch and like sort of cutting off the branch of that tree himself.
Okay.
But it's a story about trees. Muttama just reminded me, saying that topped the charts, a couple of amongst the top 40 tree books in the world,
Oh
apparently.
wow! I
So
will
that
check
is a
that
big
out.
shout out goes to the author Veena Seshadri and Greystroke, who's here with us at Funky Rainbow. But that was, yes, I mean, so many fascinating bits and bytes of information from you, Malika. But we are going to, and I can see so many comments, Sunila saying that older kids, you need to get BNHS books, and then the mala coming from the tree, Avyuk saying, wow, the Rudraksh mala is finally made out of, maybe seeds, or like maybe,
Yeah.
things that fall off the tree, essentially, right?
Yes.
And, so obviously fascinating facts when you step out, right amidst trees around you. Megha Gupta has one question for you, Malika. It's a question from Zoya. Are the stories in the book true? For example, is the mango tree not really native to India? Lovely question,
Yes,
Zoya.
yes, lovely question. Yeah, so the book has some stories which are historically recorded. For example, there is a story like book that you mentioned earlier about the Chipko movement. You
Mhm.
find that story about Amrita Devi hugging the khejri trees, which is recorded in historical documents, and that story is true. There's also a story about the people tree and how Ashoka, the one under which Buddha meditated, and then how what Ashoka does with that tree. That story is also recorded in several historical sources. So there are stories which are true. Then there are stories from our epics. There is a story of the silk cotton tree from the Mahabharata. There is a story
Mm.
about the bear from the Ramayana, and these are epics. There are several, people who would call them true. There are several people who call them stories. So, and it's a matter of belief. So, when my children ask me, I tell them that I don't know. The only answer I can say is I don't know whether they're true or not. It's for you to make up your mind. If you believe they are true, they're true. If you believe they're stories, then they're stories. So they are. the one about the mango that you ask about, it's a folk tale from Goa, the area of Goa. And folk tales are generally, a mishmash of various things. So there'll be something taken from the epics, and so you have several, for example, caves in India, and the people around that area will tell you, Bhim and the Pandavas had come and lived in this cave. So they'll take something from the epics, and they'll take something from history, they'll take something from the geographical area and spin a tale. So folk tales are, that is the beauty of it. So it is partly true, partly not true, and you can never peel off the layers and tell which part is true and which part isn't. So there's always some element of truth, but may not be entirely true. But like with many of these legends, the core of it, which is the message or what it teaches you, is generally the truth. Like, Neil Gaiman's famous quote that
Oh, yes.
fiction is a story which tells you the truth. Or lies which tell you the truth. So it is layers of maybe lies, but at the core, there is always some kernel of truth. Yeah. So the mango is a folk tale, but there are some stories in this book which are also historically corroborated and recorded.
Lovely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something so fascinating, like Sunila just said, that, maybe yes, maybe not. Such a lovely way to live life and get on,
Correct.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we
Yeah.
are, of course, waiting eagerly for you to tell us a story. I don't know whether you're going to tell us one that's from your book, but for those of you, who came in a little late, Tracing Roots, Stories About Trees by Mallika Ravikumar, illustrated by Swati Karbanda and published by Karadi Tales, a lovely collection of stories, about trees and trees around us. You can, log into Funky Rainbow's website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Click on the tab that says Bazaar. There's a drop down menu that says trees, all the books that we've recommended. And we're going to try and see if we can get the ones that Mallika recommended and put them in as well across the next week or so. So over to her for a lovely story, which I really wish we could listen to sitting under a tree.
True, absolutely. Yeah, so this is a story about the Palash tree. Some of you may have heard of this term called the flame of the forest. So it is called the flame of the forest because when the Palash is flowering, the forest looks like it's on fire because the leaves, the flowers are red, this crimson, beautiful crimson red. And the forest looks like, here there's a picture, it looks like it is on fire. And even, you mentioned Kalidas. Kalidas, in fact, used a lot of expressions from nature to describe his scenes. And he uses the Palash a lot in some of his stories to describe how a battlefield of wounded soldiers with people bleeding looks like a forest of Palash trees because
Oh
it's
my
red.
God.
So he has these lovely expressions which he gets from nature. This story is not in this book. We have, this book has some stories drawn. Like there's a story about the Christmas tree, which is from the Christian tradition. There's an Akbar Birbal story, which is a folk tradition. There is a story about the Buddha, about the people tree, which is from the Buddhist tradition. So this one was again a Buddhist tale. So it doesn't make it to this book because we wanted to keep it to about 10 to 12 stories. So a number of beautiful stories have not been included, but I'll narrate the story now for you. So this is, like I said, an Indian version of The Elephant and the Five Blind Men. The Elephant and the Five Blind Men, as many of you have heard, is where there are blind men who want to see what an elephant, who want to understand what an elephant looks like. One of them touches the back and says it looks like a wall. One of them touches the leg and says it's a big pillar. One of them touches the tail and says it is it is a rope. Somebody touches the trunk and says no, it is, you guys are all wrong. This is what I have understood is right, and it is a big serpent like a python. So they all have different, and one touches the ears and says it's like the fan. So they all have different perspectives and they all challenge each other saying, no, what you think is wrong, what I know is right. But each of them has a facet of the truth. So there is this beautiful Indian story which comes to us from the Palasha Jataka. So there is a Jataka tale, as Jataka tales are stories of the previous life of the Buddha, or Bodhisattva as it is called. And there is an entire Jataka called the Palasha Jataka, which is about the Buddha's previous life as a Palash tree. Buddha's previous life and his story with the Palash tree. Sorry. So Buddha was in his previous life, the Bodhisattva was the king of Banaras. And this king of Banaras called Brahmadatta, he had 4 sons. So there were 4 princes, and he thought they, argued endlessly, didn't understand the larger picture, and he wanted them to sort of show some maturity. And he thought, how do I teach them this lesson? So then one of them during a conversation said, I want to go see the Palash tree. I've never seen, I don't know what it looks like. And that gave him this idea. So he told his charioteer to take his sons to show them the Palash tree, but not at the same time. He said, take them separately and take them after a gap of 3 months each. So the first prince goes and sees the palash tree, and he sees the tree when it is flowering. So the picture that you just saw, the tree is flowering, it is red, it is full of these lovely, lovely red flowers, and he has an idea of what the palash is. And then he comes back. His brother goes after a few months when it is not flowering, and he sees the tree when it only has leaves, it doesn't have flowers. And he sees the leaf when it tree when it has leaves, and sees this green tree with no red, no flowers, and it is green with these trifoliate big leaves. And he thinks, okay, this is the palash tree, and comes back. His brother then goes during the winter when the trees have all fallen off. The tree is bare, it has no flowers, no leaves, nothing, it's absolutely bare. And he has that impression of the palash tree and comes back. And the fourth the son goes at a time when the tree is fruiting. I don't have a picture of that here. And he gets a very different impression of this meat like fruits of the palash that he gets, and he comes back. Then the king calls them all and says, so tell me, what do you think of the palash tree? Have you all seen it? And each one, given that their personality is that they keep fighting, they start arguing, saying, yes, of course, the palash is red. And the other one says, no, what do you mean it's red? It's green. And the third one says, no, it has no color at all. It looks like a dead stump because it has no leaves, no flowers, nothing. And the fourth one says, no, what nonsense. It has fruits and it looks like this. So they start arguing with each other. And that is when the king lets them argue and sort of finally tells them that, all of you are right, but all of you are wrong. And that was a beautiful lesson that, so this is a Jataka tale, so there is always this element of moral involved, but it was not a typical, moral of the tale that we tell the child. It's a beautiful lesson to learn that merely because you know one facet of the truth doesn't mean you know the whole truth. And at the same time, just because somebody else is contesting what you're saying with something they know, it doesn't make them wrong. So that's a beautiful lesson I learned, and I shared with my children, because it would avoid so much confrontation and conflict in life if all of us had that approach, that yes, I know something and that's only one facet of it, which is also sort of a core of Indian philosophy, right? That truth has many dimensions and I see only one part of it, and just because you have seen another part doesn't mean you're wrong. And I thought that was just a beautiful life lesson to teach children in a very beautiful way, without bringing in some deep philosophy, but through a story. And I think that's the story of the Palash and the Four Princes, an Indian version, like I said, of the Elephant and the Five Blind Men. One of my favorite tree stories, unfortunately not in the book, but that gives me a chance to keep narrating it to a wonderful audience like you.
Shubh, saying such an interesting and information session this is. Thank you so much, Shubh, really. But you're right. What a lovely life lesson tucked away in the tree, just in the story of a tree, Malika. That was just fabulous. So you do actually, take children on walks. I mean, do tell our audience, of the walks that you do. And I mean, I wouldn't want to enjoy them virtually, but, really, I think would be lovely. But do tell us about what you
Yes.
do, Malika, with children and trees.
Right. So like I said, went out with the Bombay Natural History Society, and there are other groups in Bombay taking children out, taking people out on tree walks. So I do a children's version because I'm interested in sharing it with my children and their friends. So I take children out on tree walks, and I find, botany sometimes can be a very dry subject. If you're starting to talk about, okay, this is a simple leaf and this is a compound leaf, this is an evergreen tree, this is a deciduous tree. My children learn about it in their EVS notebook textbooks, and it is just so boring and dead. And here, for example, there is a story in my book about the silk cotton tree, which is a beautiful way of telling a child what a deciduous tree is.
Right.
And so you start with that story and then introduce the concept. There is a lovely story about Shiva, and there's one from the Ramayana also, where Lakshman sort of wants to hide from Bharat, who's coming with his army, and he they're hiding behind these leaves, the amla or tree, and he has his bow and arrow, and he wants to see what is happening, and he shoots his arrow, and then the trees leaves split and become small. Now these are really little odd stories, I know, but it's a beautiful way of saying what a simple leaf looks like and what a compound leaf looks like, where it's a covered leaf and you can't see anything, but Lakshman shoots this arrow and then it suddenly becomes small leaflets. So curious ways of introducing these stories, but they stick. Children meet me sometimes months afterwards and says, auntie, I saw that tree and it had tiny leaves and I knew it was a compound leaf and I remembered the story. So it's the story which helps them remember these ideas, these concepts. So unfortunately, no tree walk for a long time because of the lockdown and things, but hope it can start again.
Right. You do have a blog, I think, right? You had,
Yes,
given us some information
yes.
where you write about all kinds of. Sunila saying, Malika, what a beautiful, meaningful story. Something one learns as one grows older. Thank you for this Palash story, Palash story.
Thank you, Sunila. Yes, I
Padma
do
Baliga
write.
saying, superb session with Malika Ravi. Great morning, Team FR. So much learning right here. Thank you so much, Padma. Yeah.
Thank you
She's
so
a
much.
born
Yes,
teacher. Look at the
the
compliments that are coming your way from another teacher, a teacher that we know is a dedicated teacher, Shruti Sri Raghunath. She says
how
she's a
nice.
born teacher, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So nice to hear this. Yeah, so I have a website called malikaravikumar.com where I have already I write tree stories very often. So I have put up a lot of tree stories there, and I also have an Instagram page called Ancient Nature Tales.
Yeah, shall
Uh,
we have that? The
yeah,
slide.
that's the picture I had sent. And this page is where I collate a lot of myths, legends, art, poetry, architecture, sculpture work, but related to nature. So there'll be sculpture work from temples and stupas across India. There'll be poetry, and not just but with a focus on India, but there's also poetry written by those outside, related to nature. So there's proverbs. I love collecting proverbs related to trees and proverbs related to animals. So the proverbs, art, sculpture work, etc. And this is the Instagram page where you will find. I just started it a few months ago, so there's not a whole lot, but I am trying to gather more and hopefully develop into a page where you find where nature and culture sort of meet.
How lovely, how very lovely, for all our, readers and all our viewers watching, young and old, obviously a great resource being built there. And for those of you who want to chip in, contribute, because a lot of these stories are hearsay. And, I mean, I love that fact about Proverbs. It has me thinking. So I'm going to try and see if I can send you like some nature and tree
Sure.
Proverbs,
Great.
to add into your collection. But that was just simply a lovely, session, this blend of nature, culture, trees. I mean, we know that a lot of us have sustained ourselves through the pandemic and the and really, sort of gloomy times because of nature, and you sort of literally bringing alive the beauty and the charm of nature through your session. Vijay
Thank you
Lakshmi
so
saying, I
much.
love the session. I have a mango tree laden with flowers just by my kitchen, and I love looking at it every morning. Malika, thank you so much for your fabulous stories.
Thank you, Vijay Lakshmi. Thank you.
Sunila too saying, wow, that sounds stupendous. Nature and culture, what a perfect combination. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining us,
Sunil.
Malika. And for all our viewers, the book is up at Funky Rainbow's
Thank you.
website. We do have one of Malika's other books up in our new arrivals section. So while she's here, I can show this one to you. This is a brand new one that just came out called Of Revolutionaries and Brave Hearts, Notable Tales from Indian History. And I love the byline, finding meaning in our past. And it's a book that is just so replete with the fact that she collects trivia and transforms them into fantastic tales, because there are bits and bytes of information from different historical legends, battles, warriors, and kings that go into making this fantastic book of Revolutionaries and Brave Hearts, both available
Thank you
on
so
Funky
much.
Rainbow's website, www.funkyrainbow.com. This one is going to be up in our Tree Bazaar section, and this up on the regular website. You should pick it up and enjoy Malika's fantastic. I mean, Muttama, of course, always making photo op requests of me, and but yes, Malika's fascinating books available up for sale at Funky Rainbow. Shruti saying, thank you so much, Malika, for igniting our minds too.
Thank you. That's
That was a
wonderful.
lovely
Thank you.
session. Really, thank you so much for joining us, Malika. It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for having me, Funky Rainbow and Vidya, Muttama, all of you. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to your readers.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you.
uh, at our Tree Bazaar. And yes, that was the fabulous Malika, talking to us about tree love. And my gosh, what tree love that was, really. I am going to, go back to recommending a clutch of books, just a couple of books about trees before I say hello and hi to many people, and then show you some of our new arrivals. We do have a lovely video by an author whose tree book I have loved for decades now. So glad that it kind of made its way to Funky Rainbow only last week. But before I make that recommendation to you, the recommendation of that book, I'm going to show you one that's a lovely chapter book, again meant for 6+ year olds. And I know that one or two have asked specifically for books meant for 6+ year olds. Is Ruskin Bond's lovely book The Cherry Tree. This one illustrated by Manoj A Menon, you can see, is a chapter book with very few words, and I mean with a very large text on the pages, and illustrations accompanying all the text. What is this? It's again, that classic story of a young boy, called Rakesh, who plants a cherry seedling in his garden and watches it grow. And how does he watch it grow? Watches it grow across the seasons. And what happens to it? On his ninth birthday, Rakesh is gifted with something really special and spectacular. And Ruskin Bond, we know what a fantastic nature writer he is. He's lived and still continues to live in the midst of nature. A lot of that tree love coming alive in this book, The Cherry Tree, meant for our youngest readers. The next book that I want to recommend, and I will actually let the author speak a bit about it, but I will tell you that it's a book that I have, and I know Muttama has said this over and over again to me, that I think I may have told her at least 5,000 times in the last 8 years how much I love a book. I loved this book. I mean, I got it maybe, I think, 10, 15 years ago. Rupa Baliga saying, we loved this book. One of the first books that we bought from Funky Rainbow. Lovely to hear that, Rupa. This one, when I read this one called Vriksha, Original Tree Stories and Real Tree Facts by Vinita Ramchandani, it was just magnificent to look at trees that you could simply just see right around you. Finally, a book that was perhaps not set in Sherwood Forest, in Sherwood Forest or in Hogwarts, but set right in your backyard and in your windows. I mean, she's got stories, she's got facts about so many Indian trees, and I really, and it's and Vinita has woven in fiction and fact so beautifully in this wonderful book published by Mango many decades ago. I mean, we would recommend this for 9, 10+ year olds, but I think all adults who would enjoy reading and identifying trees that are just right around you. There are, like I said, it started off, and she will say this probably, I mean, we have a little video clipping from Vinita, who couldn't join us here this morning, but it started off as a workshop to help children identify trees. We're so glad that Vinita Ramchandani has put out this fantastic book. Let's hear her say what and tell us what the book is about.
For young kids, perfect for schools to pick up, because at the end of it you will look at a tree again, you will feel pride for nature. I take the book and I hope at the end of it, when I do my session, I want the child to re-look at a tree. We teach children how to draw a tree, or I've drawn a tree with this brown bark and a mop of green on top of it, and that's how a tree looks like, right? And I want to tell a child that, just like that the sky is not always blue, I hope you know that there are neon pink leaves, there are red leaves, and the bark is not always brown. It's gray sometimes. It has cracks and fissures on it, and it's black and it's light brown. Look again. It's amazing. These are living, breathing giants around us, and they're magnificent. We believe that kids, that in a city like Mumbai, there aren't trees, but there are trees here, and you should be able to identify at least 9. At the end of this book, I can guarantee you that every child will be able to identify at least 9 trees.
And that was this lovely book, Vriksha, for you. Like I said, myths about trees, how trees got their names, folk tales that are connected with trees. I mean, this one published by Mango DC. But Nuttama tells me that at the moment, Funky Rainbow, just the only people who have copies of this wonderful book called Vriksha. So I would really urge all of you to order away and enjoy, reading stories and facts and legends and tales around several Indian trees. There are only a few copies, left, and I'm so glad that all of them are at Funky Rainbow. This one priced at 145 rupees, published by Mango Books. My next tree book is again a gorgeous, gorgeous tree book from the House of Tara. It's, I mean, they really produce such beautiful books. And this one called Tree Matters, written by Gangubai, written, illustrated by Gangubai. And the text, actually, she's been helped to create the text by Geeta Wolf and We Geeta from Tara. Is such a, is a story set in the Bhil community of central India, and obviously one of the country's oldest indigenous communities. I mean, it evokes their wonderful relationship with nature. I mean, it's at once a playful relationship, it's at once a sacred relationship, it's at once an intimate relationship, but it's all about how the environment is just completely enmeshed into their lives. Gangubai, the Bhil artist, she really brings this connection alive through her joyful Bhil art, and you can see, like, the picture that I showed you was a segment on berries that, she is writing about. What is life like every day in the forest? What are the thorns all about? And the food focuses on their lives. I mean, whether it's food, there's work, there are festivals, illness, childbirth, so much ecological wisdom tucked away into the pages of this, just, like I said, drop dead gorgeous book that has been brought alive by Gangubai's art. This one, published by Tara, is priced at 400 rupees. It's a gem, it's a keepsake in every way. I mean, we would recommend this again for 8+ year olds, but really from 8 to 100, or 800 even, you could definitely be reading this fantastic book. My next recommendation is that, which is different from the fiction that we recommended to you, is this one that he did for NBT very, very many years ago, called The World of Trees, written, as I said, by Bond and illustrated by Kolol Majumdar. Again, here, those few books, one of those early books that introduce us to trees that we are already familiar with, that you may have heard stories about. Like, he begins with The Mighty Banyan. This is a book of nonfiction, and it's a lovely book of nonfiction, perhaps facts and, bits of information that he has gathered in the course of all his walks. So there's the banyan tree, there's the peepal tree, there's the neem tree, see the sacred people, and there is the mango grove, obviously 1,500 species of mangoes. If that is indeed true, we could have entire books. Sorry, so 1,500 varieties. Sham corrects me. Absolutely, you could have an entire book on it. This one about trees that are deep in the forest, a gem of a book published by NBT, written by Ruskin Bond, priced at 80 rupees. I know, and of course, again, in the line of nonfiction, a fairly new book that has come out from Hachette, which is part of their 501 Facts Factory series. And this one about amazing plants and trees of the world, written by Amreen Tour. I mean, it's filled with, you can see that there are, the book is broken up into different sections, different kinds of vegetables, fruits, palms, flowers, fascinating trees, and lots of photographs and illustrations accompanying, perfect for kids who have who are like, who love trivia, because there are just these little bits and bites of information that that plumb the depth of trees and plants all over the world. It really takes you on a lovely whirlwind green tour, this book. This one, published by Hachette, we'd recommend it for 10+ year olds, priced at 399 rupees. My next recommendation was something that Malika already spoke of, so I'm delighted that she referred to one of our favorites at Funky Rainbow, The Trees of Medley Gardens by Ranjit Lal, a master storyteller who weaves in trees with this unusual adventure story. This one published by Red Turtle, priced at 295 rupees. And again, we'd recommend it for 10 plus year olds. I have just two more books. Hooray for once, actually, being able to cover almost all the books that we've put in our collection. This one is part of the Arusha series. And Arusha is a character that has absolutely written by Roshni Choksi, went viral. The Arusha stories are great fantasy stories, and one of those, we have the others on our site as well. Just type out Arusha, but one of these mysteries, and it's a set of three stories basically, which is Arusha and the End of Time, Arusha and the Tree of Wishes, and Arusha and the Song of Death. Roshni Choksi, a compelling writer. This one is set, the crux of the mystery is in a huge wish granting tree. It's really a fantasy adventure that 10 plus year olds will love. The pace of the story is quite compelling, and there's all the right elements that bring it alive. There's a mysterious prophecy, there is like a villainous, there's a villainous person, and there is this mystical wish granting tree that absolutely holds the crux to this mystery. And it's a race against time, so you're turning the pages really fast. Each of the stories start and finish on their own, but it is a trilogy. If you pick this up and read it as well, you would be able to read it as an independent book. This one published by Penguin, priced at 399 rupees. And of course, because so many of you watching out here are adults, and we love books that have been written for adults as well. Just like Malika had a recommendation, we make a recommendation, one of Funky Rainbow's absolute favorites, this fantastic book written by Harini Nagendra and Seema Mandoli. And really, I think anybody that doesn't have it should order it off us right away. Cities and Canopies, Trees in Indian Cities. What a beautiful intersection of culture and ecology. I can see Savio. Hooray, Savio, for watching our bazaar. What a cover, Arusha and the Tree of Wishes. Trust you to look at the cover of the book. We learn, we live and learn every day. It was all about the wish granting tree for me, but you're right. It's such an attractive cover, really, Savio. And thank you so much for pointing that to us. Sunila saying, Cities and Canopies, what a wonderful book. Yes, it's the perfect, almost the most magnificent intersection of culture and ecology. And just like the book that Malika recommended, which is about trees communicating with each other and Western trees, this one is absolutely set in the midst of trees that we see all around us. There's the jamun, there's the shaggy-headed banyan tree, there are the palms, there is the tamarind tree, there's the eucalyptus, there's the amaltas, the burst of colors from an amaltas tree. I mean, Harini Nagendra and Seema Mandoli have done such a fantastic job, of bringing alive nature and trees and culture magnificently in this book. I mean, we say it is for adults, but I'm very, very sure that children above the age of 12 can read it, enjoy it. I remember reading a fantastic bit of information about the Muringakai tree, the drumstick tree. So the book really has superb tales and factoids, and all about Indian city trees. So it's not even like you need to get away far and away. These are just trees that are right in your midst. This one, published by Penguin, is a must have for all you tree lovers out there. This one is priced at 499 rupees, all available at a discounted price. If you log into www.funkyrainbow.com, click on our segment, on the header that says Bazaar, there is a drop down menu, and one of the drop downs will say trees all these books up there. Use our discount coupon, which has been put up right up on our website when you're checking out, and you are sure to get a fabulous, fascinating collection of tree books. Before we go, we will say hello and recommend two, three of our new arrivals, but I will quickly say hello, or maybe we can do the new arrivals and say hello, Matma. Sham, you want to? And yes, we are just going to quickly run you through some of the new arrivals. This fantastic book, The Bhoot Busters of Himatnagar, it came in a couple of weeks ago. So I've had the pleasure of reading this one. Just one word to say: move over, Ghostbusters. You better check out the Booth Busters, because they're just a lovely gang of friends in a little village called Himatnagar, and they have a group of 5 friends who have a crime to solve. Written by Aditi Rao and published by Scholastic India. This one priced at 250 rupees. I haven't read this one. We haven't read many of our new arrivals yet, but this one promises to be a real rollicking read. The Zoo in My Backyard by Usha Rajagopalan. A fantastic collection of reminiscences, about animal characters in. Sorry? Muttama reminds me that she is a lake conservationist herself, Usha Rajagopalan, about animals, both wild and domestic, so Durrell like, my family and other animals. So this is the Zoo in My Backyard. It is, has high praise from, Zai Whitaker, saying that it's a wonderful Darwinian account of interesting human and animal characters, both wild and domestic. And, this is perfect to read by yourself and for reading out aloud. This one priced at 290 rupees. Another lovely one that's made its way into our shelves just 2-3 days ago, and which is going to be my weekend reading for sure: When the World Went Dark by this fantastic writer, Jane D'Souza. And it's such a timely book. I mean, I have to read it, but I'm going to say that, and from listening to what Jane had to say about it and to reading some of her posts, it is set it is set during the lockdown. So it's a timely book if ever there was one. It is, about a young girl called Swara, and, who loses her favorite person during the lockdown. But what happens? There is hope always springs eternal. Jane D'Souza is a compassionate writer for kids, and this one, I'm sure, combines a mystery and a good laugh very, very nicely. We'll read it across the weekend and keep you posted on how much we enjoyed this one. Published by Penguin, priced at 250 rupees. And of course, last, a book that has come back to life, that has been reprinted and, abridged and updated, India A to Z. I can't claim not to have read this one, because I'm one of the writers of the book myself, written along with Veena Seshadri, and, with cartoons by Greystroke. This is an alphabetical tour of incredible India, taking you, all through the mysteries and wonders and the marvelous things that constitute, that make India the fascinating country that it is. This one came out in 2013, and this edition is an updated, revised edition, which came out just a day before Republic Day. So India A to Z, for all of those who want to get to know India and want to get to know it as easily as ABC. Published by Penguin, priced at 350 rupees. Before we say bye, of course, hellos and highs to so many friends and, been watching us across the show. Making Wild Paper, hi, we love that name. Making Wild Paper, indeed. Ellen Monster, Savio Mascarenas, Sunila Kulkarni saying, yay, yay, yay for India A to Z. It's fantabulous. And we know that her copy just reached her, I think, yesterday, perhaps. So, yes, we'll be waiting for those reviews, Sunila. Savio Mascarenas, so delighted that you joined us. Bhavika Patel, Neelam Fernando, storyteller. How delightful that you're here. Pranita Lele, Sajita Sunil, absolutely a pleasure. Priyanka Saha, Vani Balraman, so delighted that you joined us all the way from Hyderabad. Savio is saying, what a wonderful session this is. Thank you so much. You guys make it all, even more wonderful.
Vani is the one who listens to you as the radio when she's working.
Oh, Mutama reminds me and tells me that Vani, you listen to me, while you're working with the radio, like the radio playing in the background. I am almost tempted to burst into song, but let me assure you that I can't hold a single tune properly. But yes, it reminds me of Amin Sayani, and I'm thrilled. Thank you for joining us at this bazaar, Vani Balraman. There's one more name up there, Muttama. Vijay Lakshmi Nagaraj, Divya Menon, which is Avyukta Nameya Nair, Preeti Manoj. So delighted you're here. Shubh SK, such a pleasure to see you here. We would love to see your son doing one more bazaar video for sure. Revati Pachayappan, Tripti Banga Ahuja, Avyukt Nair, Megha Gupta. What a pleasure. KV Bharadwaj, Saumitu, Stories from Stones. We just love it that you join us week after week, sending big hugs out to you there, that's the fantastic history writer, Devika Karyappa, whose lovely books are at Funky Rainbow, of course. Gayatri Bambra, Nandini Starshine, what a pleasure that all of you joined us at the Tree Bazaar this Saturday morning. Just a couple of lessons to learn from trees as a closing, just to close our bazaar session. Well, many things that you can learn from trees. Stay grounded, connect with your roots, so important to Funky Rainbow. Turn over a new leaf if you think you need to do that. Keep growing. For us, the tree of life is right behind us. Books, they keep you rooted. Buy them, read them, enjoy them. Thank you for joining us this Saturday.
Loch Ness Monster says, indeed a wonderful session. Love you guys.
Loch Ness Monster, we love you, Loch Ness Monster. And you say that it's a lovely session. Thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if you have joined us all the way from Scotland. It doesn't matter if you're an Indian Loch Ness Monster as well. But really, folks, lots of wonderful books on trees. Browse, enjoy your weekend, and pick up some of these tree books if they interest you. Bye-bye and have a great weekend.